All right, welcome to Introduction to Cybersecurity. So in this first week series of videos, I'll be going over the basics of what cybersecurity is, what are the different mechanisms behind it, and yeah, just an overview about where we are at and what we need to do, right? So first, we'll cover what is security. Um, and then we look at security objectives, defense overviews, security management, and cybersecurity, right? But before we move on, here is a brief intro to what terminologies I'm referring to when I say risk, vulnerability, exploitation, threat, or asset, okay? But I'm not going to go over these, so you can read them on your own time. So security, what is it? If you look it up on Google, this is what I get. Fortitude Security Services, NPB Security Services, Ocean Security Services. Oh, they have a 5-star review. Great. But security, when we talk about security, we have to also think about physical space. But that's not what we are interested in this unit. We're looking at cyber security in the cyber domain. However, the concept applies the same. So security is the degree of resistance to or protection from harm. It applies to any vulnerable and or valuable asset, such as person, dwelling, community, item, nation, or organization. So if you change some words on the last parts of that, what we define as a valuable asset, but in terms of digital assets, then that applies in the cyber domain. Okay, so that's what we like to think in that aspect. So first, to understand cybersecurity, we need to know about information security. So when we first had computers, we were dealing with information flows through computers. So information security is like the very introductory level of cybersecurity. However, over the time until like now, the cyberspace has been expanding, right? So it has been used in various aspects of our life, and therefore people have moved from information to cyber. But the concepts of information security is still relevant and forms the basis of cybersecurity. So what is information security? Well, there are three fundamental components in information security, which are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So whenever people talk about CIA in information security or cybersecurity, these are the words that they're referring to. Okay, so confidentiality is information only available to those authorized. Okay, so I don't want other people to know about some secret message that I like to send to somebody else. Information cannot be modified or damaged by others, and make sure that information that I sent is genuinely what I wrote without other people making changes. Availability, information is always or to some degree of always accessible. And finally, when that information is sent, I expect that information to be received by the party that I expect them to. Okay. So that is CIA in information security. So just always keep that in mind. CIA is information security triad. Okay, so this is called the CIA triad. So let's have a look at detail of some examples of CIAs. When we talk about communications in security, we always talk about Alice and Bob because it's A and B, and then we just gave them a name. So in terms of confidentiality, what we want to do is make sure that the message that Alice or Bob wants to send to one another can reach to the other person without anybody else having a look. But obviously, when we talk about two different people in computer systems, we're not physically bounded to be next to each other. Often we are very far away in geographical locations. So Alice is in Wonderland, Bob is in Jamaica, and obviously it's going to take a while for them to physically meet to exchange secret messages. So to overcome that, we have the internet, right? The internet allows us to send messages over instantaneously without having you to go and meet the person physically. Okay, so this is what we can do. However, there are always a third party that tries to see what kind of messages, especially important ones, are floating around the internet. And when we talk about a third person trying to be malicious, we talk about Eve. So Eve attached to the internet as well. If it detects that a message is going over, it is possible that another party, like Eve, can intercept that and also get that information. So confidentiality is the information is only accessible by authorized entities, and in this instance, Eve is stealing the important message, therefore the confidentiality has not been provided in this instance. So how can we achieve confidentiality? You may post a video here and think about it. Right? So what did you come up with? Yep. Okay. All right. So let's say if that matches with my list, yeah? So there's a few different ways to achieve this. I'm just going to highlight very popular ones. For instance, we have access control. Make sure that only allowed people can have access to the information. Use encryption. Make sure that only the other person know how to decrypt your encrypted message to receive. Or use steganography, meaning you can hide your information in another medium, and then when the other party receives it, they can extract the hidden message out. Okay? Of course, there are other techniques that allows you to achieve confidentiality, but these three methods are the ones that are mostly used. In fact, encryption is probably the basis for any communications nowadays, especially when we're moving away from HTTP. But we'll cover that HTTP stuff week 7 or 8-ish. Yeah, we'll get there. Integrity is, as mentioned before, about making sure that the message is not altered by a third party. So for example, if Alice wants to meet Bob at 2 p.m. and Bob is supposed to get that message, but if a third party intercepts that message, okay, and possibly make changes. For instance, Eve made a change to meet at 3 p.m. This means Alice has to wait for an hour to meet Bob because Bob received a wrong information, right? So integrity is the information can only be changed by authorized entities. And in this instance, Eve was not one of the authorized entities, but still allowed to make changes to the message. That means the integrity is not provided in this instance. So how can we achieve integrity? You can also have a think by pausing this video now. Okay, so here is also some few popular method of providing integrity. So access control, again, as long as you can limit off people from accessing it, you can also protect it from being modified, but also providing a checksums. Checksums are some algorithm that used to process the whole information and give you a value. Okay, so it's very difficult for you to reverse the checksum back to the information, but it's quite easy to produce the checksum from the information. We'll have a look at this a bit later. But also, you have to have a good data management policies, and you can also use digital signatures. Actually, checksum is related to digital signatures. But yeah, so there are various ways to ensure that we can provide integrity when two or more parties are communicating. And lastly, we talked about availability. Make sure the message can reach your destination person, right? So I want to send this message, but the Eve came along and broke that communication channel. Then Bob didn't get any message from Alice. And depending on what kind of mechanisms there are, Alice may not even know that the message has been delivered to Bob or not, right? So that's a big problem in those scenarios. So availability, the information must be accessible when needed. So that's what we're trying to do. So how to achieve availability? Okay, here's another session where you can pause and think about how to get availability. Yeah, so here is a list of a few different techniques to achieve availability. Redundancy is one thing. For instance, you have a server running, but due to a heavy traffic, the server was overloaded. Some customers were not able to access it. That means you can have more servers in the background to ensure that the load gets balanced, spread out, to ensure all the customers can access, things like that. So that's redundancy. There are DOS detection and mitigation strategies. For instance, packet filtering of suspected DOS packets, depending on, for example, the domains or the IP addresses, and also vulnerability patch. There are some vulnerabilities that trigger availability issues. For instance, I hope you know about pings, yeah, kind of. We'll have a look at ping or death. But basically, if you run it through off Linux, there's a base setting for ping, which specifies what's the packet size of the pings and how many pings you want to send and so forth. And if you maximize this with the maximum number of pings to send, sometimes if the receiving host does not have sufficient computing power, nowadays everybody does, but if that was the case, then it can be overloaded. Then this is kind of a vulnerability related to a software or how you handle network protocols. So there's a different vulnerabilities at different layers that can be patched to avoid that. But we'll cover all of these later on. Okay. So that gives you an overview of information security. In the next video, we'll move on to some examples. Bye.